Welcome to Chapter 14 of Yellow Farmhouse Makes. My name is Julie. I'm a British expat and I live in the northeastern part of the United States with my husband and our rescue dog, Jim. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. If you're a new viewer, you're very welcome here. We did gain quite a few new subscribers over the Advent season while I was doing Vlogmas. So that was wonderful. And we had a great time chatting back and forth, which is really the point of my podcast. I want to be able to grow community and share with you and have you share with me. So that was wonderful. I really had a great time. And if you watched, I hope you enjoyed spending some time with me. So I have quite a few things to talk about today. I have several finished objects and several whips, a little bit of knitting and sewing, and a little bit of book chat towards the end. But let's start with what I'm wearing. I am wearing the ranunculus, which is a pattern by Midori Hirose. And I knit this jumper in 2022 and I used Nutiden yarn, which is an unspun yarn. That was a learning curve for me. It's a yarn that is very fragile, but once you've knit it, it's an incredibly strong and lightweight fabric. So I held my Nutiden double and I wound it up into very loose balls before I started. They come in a plate. I don't have any plates of yarn to show you, but they come in a plate. So I very carefully took 2 plates, made a ball, and then knit away. And then if the yarn does break, it's pretty easy to keep going because it's 100% wool. All you need to do is to put the 2 ends together using a spit splice. So if you don't know what that is, you take the 2 ends of the yarn, you spit on your fingers or on the yarn. It sounds disgusting, but it's fine. And then you put the ends overlapping a little bit like this. And then between the palms of your hand, you rub them together to create friction and warmth, and it joins the yarn together. It's kind of like a magic trick. It's wonderful. So I did enjoy knitting this a lot. And if you've never tried unspun yarn, I would recommend that you give it a go. It's a lot of fun. All right, so without further ado, let's talk about my knitted finished objects. If you did watch Vlogmas, you will know that I was knitting the Litmus Cowl, which is a pattern by Jude Harper. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. And I used my homemade Advent and added a stripe every day. I had 25 10-gram minis, which were just scraps from my stash. And the way you knit the cowl is cast on 100 stitches using a provisional cast on. Then you just knit in the round, just adding a new stripe every day. And when you get to the end, you take off your provisional cast on, and then you graft the 2 ends together. And I did make a video showing how I finished the project, which I will link underneath, or if I can figure it out, a link up top. So the project is all done, and the size that I ended up with is a cowl that wraps around my neck twice. It's incredibly soft and I really love it. So this is the finished cowl with all the colors added in, and it's been blocked nicely, and I have resisted wearing it so that I could show it to you, not all scrumpled up. So that is the beautiful Litmus Cowl, and it's very soft and squishy, and I can't wait to wear it now that I've shown you that. It was knit on 3.5mm needles, which is a US 4. But I don't think it's completely that critical with something like this. It's more of a recipe to follow than a pattern per se. If you look at the Ravelry project page, you'll just see lots of different versions of this cowl, but it's a lot of fun to make. So that is my first finished object. And my second finished object is also an accessory, and it is the Simple Thing by Melina Brell. It's a free pattern, and it is I guess you would call it more of a scarflet. Takes 1 skein of yarn, calls for a DK yarn, and I knit mine in more of a sport weight. And you start with a tab cast on, and then you just knit lengthwise just using garter stitch, and it is worked sideways till you get to, I would suggest weighing your yarn, because when you get to the halfway point, you're going to start decreasing. So you increase half of the yarn, and then you decrease the rest of the yarn, and it ends with a kind of unusual cast off where you end up grafting the ends together. So I used some yarn that I had picked up for my birthday several years ago at an alpaca farm, and this is the Apple Hill alpaca yarn, and it's undyed. And this is what it looks like. And because it's alpaca, it's very soft and drapey. And this little shawlette, scarflet, has an I-cord edge on both ends. You can see that. Both, not ends, both sides. But it's just lovely knitting because it's just garter stitch back and forth, and then increasing every, I think it was every 5th or 6th row, I can't remember now. And then once you get to the center point, then you're just decreasing. So this, I'll put a picture in. This you can wear just kind of wrapped around your neck and tied in a jaunty fashion, or just, you know, tucked into your coat. The nice thing about this is it's not too big. It's not very bulky. So, you know, you could wear this around the house too if you were chilly. So that is my second object. I'm just making sure that I said everything I needed to. Yep, I did. So this is lovely, lovely 100% alpaca. Now that's my second knitted finish object. So my third knitted finished object is a tiny little headband. And I just made this pattern up out of my head except for the motifs. So I cast on 100 stitches on US 3 double pointed needles, which is a 3.25 millimeter needle. And I did some 2x2 ribbing at the top and the bottom, and this was just knit in the round. And then the motif in the middle. Now I know when you do color work it's supposed to have more contrast, but I was just using up scraps of that alpaca yarn and some scraps of some Ulcentrum that I had in the color grass green. So I got the motif for the headband from this book, which is the Doodle Knit Directory by Jamie Lomax. It's a super fun book. It is just full of all kinds of, I can't show you too much because I'm not sure how we do for copyright there, but I'll give you a quick flash. So it's full of different motifs that you can add into all kinds of things. And there are some patterns at the back for socks, a cowl, mittens, I think that was it, maybe a hat. So I just went through and looked for a motif that would fit on a headband. And the one that I chose was called Pine Boughs. And I just added that in. So 100 stitches for me worked out for the size of my head. And I like the little motif. I might make another one just with a more contrasty yarn, but I like it. It was very quick to make. It only took an afternoon, something like that. So that's my tiny, tiny finished object. And pop the book out of the way. Let's get on to works in progress. So I had talked in chapter 13 that I was going to be starting the basic raglan jacket, which is a pattern by Karen Daimler Lawrence, and that is a pattern that's on the Knit Picks website, and it's also on Ravelry. On Ravelry, I think it's $4.99. But it is a raglan jacket that you can either make with a hood, without a hood, with a zipper, or with those metal clasps and decorative ribbon. Still haven't quite decided how I'm going to finish mine off. I did decide no hood because I don't need a hood. But I have time to figure out whether I want to do a zipper or the ribbon. But let me show you the progress that I've made. I cast this on beginning of January, I think January 2nd. Now the construction of this is kind of interesting because you start with the sleeves and then the pockets and then the body of the garment, and then you add the sleeves to the body and then continue with the yoke. So it's a construction that I'm not familiar with at all, but I'm trusting the process. So this is knit with Knit Picks, wool of the Andes, tweed worsted weight, and this color is called Lost Lake Heather. It's very pretty, and wool of the Andes tweed is very soft yarn. I'm knitting it on US 7 or 4.5 millimeter needles, and I did knit a swatch in the round as you're supposed to. I washed and blocked it to make sure I got gauge, and I got the stitch count correct, but my row gauge was just a tiny bit off, which means that knitting the sleeve I did have to omit part of the pattern increase section to make sure that my sleeve length was correct, because the last thing I want is sleeves that are too long. My arms are not particularly long anyway, and most garments that either I buy or I make, the sleeves are always too long. So I just have to bear that in mind as I'm knitting, that my row gauge is a little different. But here's my swatch that I made in the round, so that's why it's got all these fuzzy edges. And the reason you swatch in the round, if part of the knitting is in the round, like the sleeves are in the round, is because a purl stitch creates a different tension and it will make your swatch a little bit different. But if you knit your swatch in the round, which I do on straight needles, I knit it like an I-cord. So I knit across and then wrap some yarn around the back and then push it up to the other end and then knit across again. So that's how you knit a swatch in the round on straight needles, because you couldn't knit a swatch this teeny tiny on a small circular. So and the reason I swatch now is because when I was a beginning knitter, I did knit a sweater and I had no idea what I was doing, and I didn't knit a swatch, and it turned out to be more of a dress than a sweater. It was enormous. Lesson learned. I mean, I did end up wearing it like a dress, but that's not what it was supposed to be. So ever since then, I have been pretty religious about swatching. So anyway, let's talk about the sleeve. I have one sleeve done. And the thing that I really love about this pattern is it has a rolled cuff, which just makes it look so professional and neat. And there's the inside. So the little pearl bump is where you turn it over. So you do start with a provisional cast on for the sleeve and then knit until you do the pearl row, and then fold it over and attach it using 3 needles. And then you just knit, increase to the underarm. So I've finished one sleeve. I have my second sleeve on the go. And the sleeves went by quite quickly, so that was very satisfying. Sometimes when you do sleeves last, you have a little bit of garment fatigue, but doing it this way was nice. And because it's worsted weight yarn, it's going quite quickly. So that is my basic raglan jacket that is on the go. And my other whip, living in my favorite sheepy bag. I love that fabric. That's one that I made for myself, and it has this really lovely Japanese fabric, which has, you can't really tell on the camera, but it's a little bit of gold sparkle. So this is my bamboo wedding shawl by Pearl Soho, and I'm making this to wear to my son's wedding. They have an afternoon wedding, and then it'll go on into the evening, and it might be a little chilly. It's in September, so I just wanted something lacy and pretty to wrap around. My goal is to get this finished by May, because I'm going into the city to find a dress to wear to the wedding, and I would like to take my finished shawl with me so that I can find a dress that matches the shawl. I'm sure most people buy a dress and then make a shawl, but I'm doing it backwards, but that's okay. So this is a free pattern on the Pearl Soho website, and it is just a long wrap with like a lace trellis pattern, and I've almost finished 2 repeats of this. I did put in a lifeline because after the first repeat, because I messed up and I had to rip back and I got myself in a muddle. So my lifeline is in, and I'll probably just put in a lifeline just for peace of mind after every repeat. It's a 12-row repeat. 1 row is the pattern and 1 row is pearl. So it's just a series of yarn overs, knit 2 togethers, slip, slip knits, and knitting. Isn't it amazing that just simple stitches can create such a lovely pattern? So the yarn I'm using is Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino. And this color is called Soft Mint. I didn't want anything too heavy because it's possible that it'll still be warmish, and I didn't want to overheat. So I figured a cotton merino blend would be good. It's mostly cotton. I'm trying to think if it says here what the makeup is. Yep, 75% organic cotton and 30% extra fine merino. So it's lovely yarn. I am knitting this on US 3.25 millimeter needles. And I will say it's not hard lace, but if you're anything like me and you're a daydreamer, don't daydream. That's all I can say. I really have to be wide awake and focused, because even though it's not hard, if you start daydreaming, you lose track of where you are. And that's why there is now a lifeline in here. So I need focused time where no one is going to interrupt me, and just plug away at this a few rows at a time. So thoroughly enjoying this one. I'll put my needle stopper on. This is just a wine cork, and I slice the wine corks into 3, and then I poke a hole, and then you can just stick your needles in there. It's very effective and doesn't really cost you anything. So that is my bamboo wedding shawl, which is bringing me a lot of joy, mostly because I'm thinking of the wedding, which is exciting. And then my last work in progress is I've actually put quite a lot of knitting time into my jelly roll blanket. And this is a pattern by K.F. Jones from the Bakery Bears, and it's £4.75 on Ravelry. And I think possibly the last time I showed you this, I had 3 strips in it. So I finished 4 strips and I'm now on to the 5th. And this is just such great knitting for in front of the TV. Again, this is all scrappy. And sometimes in the car. But it does keep your lap nice and warm. The interesting thing about this is I'm using up a lot of leftover sock yarn. And without giving away too much, there are slip stitches involved. But it's very interesting to see how some slip stitches, even though I'm doing exactly the same thing, are a lot neater than others. And I think that has a lot to do with whether the yarn is 100% wool or superwash merino. I mean, it doesn't really bother me too much. I'm hoping it blocks out a little more evenly when I'm finished. But I mean, it's nice. The little slip stitches are a nice detail. There's an error right there, but I'm not going to fix it. This is just going to be a blanket for outside when I'm sitting having coffee on the porch. So that is my jelly roll blanket, and that is knit on US 2.75 millimeter needles, and I just using little DPNs. Oops. Back and forth. It's a fun pattern. It's a great way to use up scraps, and I have it in my little DPN holder to keep everything from falling apart. So that is the jelly roll blanket. All right, I have a few sewing FOs to show you. During Vlogmas, I had hinted that I was making something really fun, but I couldn't show you because the recipients sometimes watch the podcast and I didn't want to spoil the surprise. So I had taken some scrap fabrics, and I'd never done this before. This was the first time for me. And I made fabric out of scrap fabrics, if that makes sense. I'm sure there's a term for it. I can't remember what it is though. But then I used the fabric to make bookmarks. So I just did a decorative stitch around the edge, and I have a backing which has some fusible interfacing on it, and then I just used my pinking shears and made a decorative edge. So I made a couple of these cute little bookmarks with scrap fabric. That was a lot of fun. So that is one little sewn project. And then my husband got a new razor for Christmas, and he wanted me to make a little zipper pouch to put it in. He has a zipper pouch that I made him a while ago for a different razor. So I just sewed him this one. Didn't have a lot of fabric in my stash that wasn't too girly. So he picked this one. It's just little navy blue dots on a taupe background. I did a green zipper, and then he picked this fabric for the lining, and his razor lives in there. Just keeps everything together, the charger and the little pieces. So that was a fun little project to put together, and I did use a tutorial on YouTube, and I'll link that below if you want to give that a go too. So that was a quick and easy project also. And then the last thing that I sewed were lavender pouches to hang in the closet. So here they are. I have 2 so far. I'll probably make some more to keep in my bags of yarn. This one has 2 little wooden beads on it, and it's double-sided, and I used blanket stitch. And here's one with just 1 wooden bead on it and a different color on the other side, and again blanket stitch but different color yarns. And then there's loose lavender in here inside the pouch. So the reason I made these is because when we were shopping for furniture, we had ordered fabric swatches of upholstery fabric that come in small squares with a like a little peel and stick backing on them with the name of the fabric. And we are indecisive people, so inside here is a lot of these little upholstery squares. So front, and once you take the label off, it doesn't leave a sticky residue or anything. You have front and back. So I was looking at it thinking, what on earth could I make with these? Because some of the fabric's so pretty. And I was like, oh, well, I thought about bunting, which, you know, absolutely could do bunting. It's pretty too. But then I decided I would put lavender inside them. So I have a lot more. I can probably just whip out a few of these. You know, it was nice because it's just meditative hand stitching. My hand stitching skills aren't fabulous, but I assume the more I do the blanket stitch, the better I'll get at it. So yeah, I have a lot of these left. So I could make some bunting for across here with triangles, which would be good for all year round, or make some more hearts and just stuff them with some fluff for a Valentine-y bunting. But that was a lot of fun. I just made myself a template from one of the pieces that still had the sticky on the back. So I used this as my heart template. I just freehand drew that one. So that is what I've been sewing. I do have plans to sew a cover for it's a footstool storage that the previous owners left in the house, and it had some kind of ugly towel fabric on it. And I need to go to the fabric store and find either some canvas or some heavy cotton duck, because I want to recover that and make it look a little nicer, because once I took the towel off, it was just kind of a boring off-white color. And then I also would like to make a new tablecloth for our dining room table. I've looked and looked, and I'm not seeing anything that I like. So I figured if I can find some fabric at the fabric store that's wide enough. I think it only needs to be 56 inches wide, which I'm not a sewist, but I'm pretty sure you can find fabric in that width, or 54, somewhere in there. And then sew a tablecloth. So that's another project. And then I would like to make myself a skirt. I haven't really sewn very many garments in my lifetime. Probably the last time was 25 years ago, and I made a dress, but I haven't made anything since then. So I figure if I start with a skirt, that would be good. So I need to kind of check around and see if I can find any good patterns. So if you are a sewist and you have any recommendations for me for like a loose and flowy skirt with pockets. Pockets are essential because I love a good pocket. Let me know in the comments down below. So I'm going to insert some footage for you of making my Advent, because that was a request that I had. And I will see you on the flip side of that in just a little bit. Before we wrap it up for today, I just wanted to show you a couple of books that I received for Christmas. One of them I've started reading and I'm enjoying very much. So the first one is called The Barn by Sally Coulthard. I'm on a bit of a non-fiction kick at the moment, and this one is all about agricultural Yorkshire in the 1700s and 1800s. So it's sort of a social history book. I'll read you the blurb on the back. So if you're interested in anything like that, this has been very fascinating. And it is just a tiny piece of history, you know, with everything else going on in the world at that time, but it's very interesting. So it says, across the fold yard from Sally Coulthard's North Yorkshire farmhouse stands an old stone barn. When she discovered a set of witches' marks on one of its internal walls, she began to wonder about the lives of the people who had once lived and worked there. Both the intimate story of a building and its hinterland and a wider social history, the barn explores a hidden corner of rural Britain that has witnessed remarkable changes. From the 18th century enclosures to the Second World War, the fortunes of the barn have been blown like a leaf in a gale by the unstoppable forces of new agriculture and industry. Seismic shifts in almost every area of society were all played out here in miniature against a backdrop of scattered limestone villages and the softly rolling Howardian hills. So I am probably 3/4 of the way through and enjoying this immensely. And then I also got another book by the same author, Sally Coulthard, and it's a short history of the world according to sheep. So this one, I have a feeling I read this as a digital copy several years ago, but I mean, if only just for the illustrations. Aren't they gorgeous? It's nice to have a physical copy. So I'll be reading this one next. I'm going to give you the blurb on the back of this one. From the plains of ancient Mesopotamia to the vast sheep farms of modern-day Australia, sheep have been central to the human story. Since our Neolithic ancestors' first forays into sheep rearing nearly 11,000 years ago, these remarkable animals have fed us, clothed us, changed our diet and language, and financed the conquest of large swaths of the earth. Sally Coulthard weaves this fascinating story into a vivid and colorful tapestry of engaging anecdotes and extraordinary ovine facts, whose multiple strands celebrate just how pivotal these woolly animals are to almost every aspect of human society and culture. So, 2 book recommendations from me. I'm sure by the time I come back in February, I will have finished this one and I can tell you whether I liked it. But so far, this one is definitely a 2 thumbs up. So during Vlogmas, we did gain a lot of new subscribers. So we're up to 174 as of today, which is January 16th, I believe. And I'm hoping that we can hit 200 subscribers, and if we do, then I might be able to do a little giveaway. I have some DPN holders that I made that I could give away as some little prizes to thank you all for tuning in and subscribing. So if you are willing, please share my channel with any other friends who enjoy fiber related or sewing content. Be sure to give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. I would very much appreciate it. So until February, I will see you very soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.